Right, this is the NCM Auctions Day that I went to and to have a look at a few broken old cars to buy just in case there was any out there to tempt us. And so there was lots of different ones that were all owned, I think, mostly by one person. The auction took place in Preston in March 2020, so that's when this is from. And most of the cars were barn fine condition, although most of them weren't owned by the same person. So it wasn't quite like the one that was just before Christmas. That was interesting, the Focus ST that clearly someone had to break into because there was no keys, but it was quite low miles. And they had lots of different unusual things that were completely mismatched, so it was kind of interesting to see. The Mark 1 Escort went for I think about 11,000, which is probably like 13,000 with fees. And I think this little minivan barn find, which I think was probably one of the more interesting things that they had there, but probably way beyond salvaging anything from. Last time I was in the hall and heard what the bidding was with it, it was a couple of £100, and there was a few guys going, "That's a couple of £100 too much for one of them." But I thought it was really cool. I would have liked it if I had a garden to just put in the garden and grow some flowers in. But alas, it was not to be. Here are some random late 90s and early noughties German cars all broken as per. But yeah, the Mark 1 Escort was fairly popular. There was a few 70s Fords that were in there. That Peugeot convertible, I'm sure, was on Car and Classic a little while ago, but it looked a little like it needed quite a lot of stuff going on. There were about 4 different XJSs, all mostly late 80s, early 90s ones, and they were all in a bit of a state of disrepair. That was a BMW E70 that was broken. A Morris Minor that had lost a fight with a lamppost. A Nova which captivated me with its beauty. And a little 80s Escort. I absolutely loved those years ago, and this one looked a little bit down at heel. But at least somebody had managed to filler in some of the rust around the wheel arch. And a banana yellow Fiat Coupe, that was interesting. I would have liked one of those, I think, just to have a car from when Chris Bangle made interesting things. One of several E-classes, Mercedes, I think that only went for several hundred. I'm pretty sure that one was a diesel and hadn't moved for a fair amount of time. There were loads of 90s BMs, Mercs and Jags and such that had clearly been left outside. I think there was about 20 cars all owned by one person, most of which had been left outdoors. This was a 90s Lincoln town car. Probably is not awfully many of those in Britain. I don't know why it had an American flag stuck on the bonnet. Kind of detracted from it a little. The Jag hadn't moved for years. These were from the same collection. That was a mid-90s C-Class Merc that I think only had about 40,000 miles on it. And I don't think it actually got a lot of money. A Ford Puma, which I absolutely love, but which rusts for fun. This seemed to have been owned by somebody else completely. That was a Corrado VR6, and that one looked absolutely on the button and had just over 100,000 miles. So a couple of 90s coupes kind of caught my interest. They're well overdue for people to start falling in love with them again. But as of right now, in 2020, they don't seem to be especially fashionable. I can't really think why. I think probably quite a lot of people would have liked the Corrado VR6 because it's just cool and it's boxy, and there probably aren't an awful lot of the V6 ones left out there. Oh, look at that. That's whose it was. Another little Puma, another broken Nova. And those are the kind of things that were all over the place. Most of the barn finds were kind of in a bit of a stored outdoors kind of condition and didn't really get beyond a few £100. Old MG hatchback that was pretty cool. That one looked really tidy. I don't think that had an awful lot of miles on it. There was a bigger MG saloon from that time that was black but had some kind of like paint stripper damage or something on it. This was a Jag XJR which looked a little bit more tired than the other sort of old 90s luxury cars that they had there. Oh, a little fiberglass beach buggy. That was pretty cool, given that Steve McQueen's late 60s beach buggy just sold for like $400,000. That one was probably quite a steal at like $2,000 from this auction. A Nissan Primera that I've not seen for like 15 years. And some MGs, probably with broken 1.8 litre engines that really need a head gasket. Another random Puma. And a brace of 90s BMWs. James Bond spec Z3 and 8 series, and I can't remember whether it was a V8 or a V12. Perhaps if you're nerdy enough to know, you could say. That was the other Corrado that was there, and that was the little 4-cylinder 16-valve one. But it was actually in really good condition. That was a 1991. I think that was running and driving. There's the Nova again. Crikey, what a beautiful automobile. And this was the resplendent 8 Series with moss growing on the side. Lovely. I really liked the colour, but it was a little worse for wear, that one. It probably needed some sprucing. What's funny on it is the indicators never sort of fade, but then the ones that are on the wing mirror do seem to go opaque over time. There was a Stag, that was really nice. There was a Clio track car, not so nice. This little Escort was in the body of a like 1.1 litre version, but I think they squeezed in some more high-powered Z-Tech or something in it. This is one of the later XK8 Jags or XKR. And then one of a couple of Land Rovers. We'll put on another little video of a Land Rover with a rare safari top that was in barn fine condition there. It was really interesting, that I got like a minute and a half of footage of just because I thought it was lovely. There's one of the MR2s from when Toyota made really reliable things back in the 90s. I just kept going back to that little Escort Mark 1 just because it was really cool. Although a few people said that whoever bought it had overpaid, I disagree. I thought it was a great place to start. I think someone will have a lot of fun restoring that. Yeah, okay, and a couple of the broken old silver German cars, except from the 6 Series from the 80s, which was really cool, and I think had been in the same ownership for quite a long time. And it had a few tired bits. It was kind of in a like daily runner kind of condition. Do I go for the handle or not? Yeah, that one was really good. I really liked that. That was probably my favourite car of the day. But I think it would probably neither fit between a sort of reliably usable or strip for parts. I think it was more towards the, yeah, it could easily be saved and you could do a lot with it. It was just that cosmetically it was probably starting to look a bit tired. And I think by the time you brought it up to a really good standard, you'd probably be into it more than it would have been to just buy a really nice one in the first place. But it was really clean and straight and a really nice 1980s sports car. So I think that was probably one that tempted me the most. But I have too many silver cars as it is. I really should get rid of them. And I made a vow that the next time I was going to make a bigger effort to get a car in a more interesting colour. So I'd be annoyed at myself if I got another silver car. What was this? Oh yeah, the van with the engine open, the old transit van with the front. How many horns they needed there, I've no idea. And that was the Bedford van next to it. I don't know who had kept those for such a long time. The transit van, I think, was from about 1977. So that must have been stored for absolutely ages. And I kept getting distracted by the lovely BMW Coupe because I'm shallow and vacuous. And it had really nice BBS wheels, mate. Okay, oh, and a 70s Shadow, which was not a sort of post-wedding hack, but had been a sort of domicile on the Channel Islands for a really long time. I think that had about 40,000 miles on it, and it somehow managed to avoid being sea salt damaged, and actually looked really nice. I loved the interior of it. It was, yeah, it was really smart. It was cool. It was certainly above most Shadows that you stumble upon. Very decadent. I really must make it a bit of a ambition to pick one of these up at some point. And look, no massive bits of rust going along the side. Oh, there was a fairy. A fairy sort of stamped on the metal bit in this purple car. That was a little Vauxhall thing. This is a Capri, and that was a 3 litre. Ooh! Great stuff for Capri nerds. Oh, resplendent in banana yellow. Yeah, Capri GT. No idea where that plate's from. Probably Spain or Portugal or something. So predictably left-hand drive. With full black vinyl interior and a clumsy automatic box. But still, really cool. I'd have liked that, I think. It would have been interesting. Don't know what that little gauge or clock is stuck down in the middle on its own, floating about like a fart in a lift. What was this? Oh, the Mark 1 Escort again, but a really nice one that was in great condition. I think that fetched somewhere in the 30 or 30 several £1,000 region on its little mini lights. That one was really nice. I liked that one. It looked like someone had spent a lot of time and effort on that already. And a doggy! Look at that doggy! Ooh, Saab. Okay, so my little guilty pleasure. And probably one of the cars that I actually went to the auction to see because I thought, ooh, a black Saab Turbo. I really, really liked those. When I got there, that one had more holes in it than an old sock. So really wasn't so bothered about that. Oh, and then there are a bunch of American cars that were all in barn findy condition. Clearly that one's a minor on the left. And the old Ford van, there can't be an awful lot of those in the UK. But we've got a separate video on those. So pop that on at a separate point. The P6 Rover is pretty cool. 6-wheeled little hustler thing, which was bizarre but captivating. This was a Covin replica of a Porsche built on a Beetle body, which was really quite funny because it had very thin front wheels. And other than that, it was actually visually quite convincing, even down to tartan seats that looked almost correct. And they'd managed to put a dashboard in that looked kind of right as well. The 944 was absolutely shot at, but probably would be fun on a track. The XR3 was really cool. This was sort of fun. The XR3 seems to be another sort of car that's kind of rocketing in value lately. And I really liked the little cassette storage boxes that it had inside. It looked really original in mostly a good way. And the miles were only 78,000, so that was pretty cool. I missed that one when that went through for sale, or that one might have got my attention. But again, it does not meet my no more silver cars criteria. I did love the little pepper pot wheels though. So the Golf GTI convertible, yeah, that one was really cool. It hadn't all rusted through like most of them do. The little sort of Carmen-bodied cabrio, probably with a GTI engine or something. Yes, it would be. And just starting to go like corroded on the body, but probably much worse underneath. I liked the inside of it. That kind of dated quite well, I thought. That wasn't awfully bad. Yeah. Oh, and it had a UB40 CD in it because it's 1991, and this is how we do things. Random tractors. Random Ford P100 that you never ever see. One of these recently sold for like 20 odd thousand pounds. It was in perfect condition, but that one was pretty knackered, and I think I don't think it even broke 1,000. It really wasn't a lot of money, but it probably needed too much time and effort for most people. An interesting curio though, and not many of them left. The minor Woody was just completely rotten through for the most part. It literally had a hole in the back end. The other Shadow that was barn find condition was from 1969, so a really older one, I think. And it looked like it had been left on the deck of the Titanic and then poorly looked after afterwards. Oh, the LS400 was interesting because that was from really early on in production, H sort of 1991, I think, and somewhere in the region of 100,000 miles. And probably one day something that would be really desirable, you could vaguely imagine, because it had just aged impeccably well and probably had much fewer problems than pretty much anything else at that age. Which could not also be said for the Saab, which, as I said, was just, yeah, just had all the corrosion in all the wrong places. The early 90s XJS looked like that could probably make a daily driver, but the paint on it was pretty atrocious. It was about 9 shades of green, some of them vaguely fluorescent. It looked like it had been attacked by someone wearing a high-vis jacket. I don't know what was going on with that. Another E-Class that was broken. There is an interesting 190E Mercedes which had the 2.6 litre in and not monstrous mileage, and also it had a cream interior which had actually managed to survive. Although the door plastics had sort of warped. And didn't really fit that perfectly. But generally it looked really great. That would have been tempting, but with my unique organisational skills, I missed the auction when that one went through. Oops! But what a great rival to a little E30 BMW. I think that would have been good fun, even with an auto box. It was pretty straight edged and didn't look rusty at all. That was from the big collection of sort of 90s cars that someone had just put under tarpaulins and then forgotten about. This was one of the S-classes that looked particularly, that was the shadier looking one. A fairly broken XJRS that didn't have the 5 litre V12, I don't think, but did have the TWR body kit on it, but it was a very, very pinky red. It was a bit tired, that one, it must be said. The S600 Mercedes was interesting. It still had its diamond cut alloy wheels on it, but it was picking up corrosion in little bits. And someone had trodden loads of mud all over the light grey carpets, which was somewhat inconsiderate of them. But for somebody who wanted a ridiculous barge that had once cost 100 grand and now was only a couple of thousand, it was probably a pretty good purchase. Someone wrote scumbag on that Astra. And they'd broken the windscreen. And it looked a bit unwell. But at least it still existed. And there's probably less than 100 GTE Astras left in the UK. So at least it's there in one form or another. Someone will probably try and piece that back together at some point, I think. That could have been a fun project for somebody. The 205, little thing that kind of looked a bit wrong, although it had Alfa Romeo seats in it. There was another Fiat Coupe. Oh, I really liked the Triumph TR7, that's bonnet was on the floor in a puddle and had red tartan in the interior because, you know, you need to have tartan in your sports car. But, gosh, that one was corroded and lots of cobwebs all over. And I had a sort of 1996 car parking permit in it, which probably goes to show how long it is since it was actually in regular use. Don't you just love TR7s? Probably the ugliest sports car ever. And yet I'd still kind of like to have one. Okay, so after the TR7, there was another sort of Mercedes E-Class Coupe, which had sort of monstrous miles on it. It was an E220, which I thought would be of interest, but in the event, it wasn't quite as interesting as I thought. Although the condition was okay, I suppose. Then they had some sort of vague off-road snowmobile type things that look like the thing they escape in that film The Shining, where they're sort of getting away from the hotel in the snow. And this one had 8 wheels on it. And it just made you think, yeah, when the snow comes, that'd be great. But whether it'd actually do anything, I've no idea. Ah, the star of the show, a Jensen Interceptor with a broken window, imported from America. And a Ford Model A, which presumably belonged to whoever it was that had all the old American cars that were at the show, which had a weirdly red and black interior, but apart from that, it was really cool and really workable condition. That was kind of fun. More Jaguars and various things outside. Ah, the Lada Riva was less than £1,000, which is cool. The Lotus Elan, I don't think was an awful lot more than an engine for a Lotus Cortina that was at the same auction, but they had all the engines at the end. So, there we are. So that was pretty much it for the NCM auction, and on a very breezy day, it was pretty hard to make the video, so that's why it's kind of wobbly at most parts. And we finished with the Routemaster bus that was 27,000 before the 20% auction fees, and the random old American rusty car, which was several thousand, but was still really, really cool. And I think probably got more attention than anything, the red bus included. But yeah, there was lots of interesting stuff to be seen. And a nice Smart 1 Capri. So yeah, tune in to catch some other sort of barn findy goodness at some point soon. Ciao!